Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the October 8th meeting of the Placerville City Council. If you would all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much, and welcome again to all the members in our audience and all of our distinguished staff members. If I could ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Mayor Acuna?
Here.
Councilmember Borelli?
Here.
Vice Mayor Saragosa?
Here.
Councilmember Taylor?
Here.
Councilmember Thomas?
Here.
Thank you, Regina. Moving on to item 3.1, lighted candle homeless camp cleanup. Mr. Zeller.
Yes, good evening,
Good evening.
Mayor and Council. I just wanted to announce that the city has signed an MOU with the Lighted Candle, agreeing to improve this site in El Dorado County by grading, laying some base rock, and creating a gated access point. And that is in exchange for the Lighted Candle agreeing to solicit and coordinate volunteers to clean up an abandoned homeless campsite on Lower Main Street and work to provide these services at other sites as mutually agreed upon by both parties. We're now focusing on a date this month to do the Lower Main cleanup, and all of the volunteers will be signing waivers prior to participating. And just wanted to let the council know that.
Well, thank you, Terry. Are there any questions for Terry on this proposed cleanup? All right, well, we look forward to lots of folks coming forward and wanting to sign up and helping us out with that, and we appreciate you bird dogging this since you arrived and getting this area cleaned up, hopefully soon.
And I just want to thank the Lighted Candle for all their efforts and what they're doing too. So finally, somebody came forth to help us out.
All right. Moving on to item 3.2, El Dorado County Elections Department Vote Centers. Bill O'Neill, I believe, is in our audience. Good evening, sir. He is our Registrar of Voters. Welcome. Nice to see you. Please pull that up.
All right, can you hear? Oh, you can.
Yes.
Wow, it's like really loud.
It's just like FM radio.
Mayor and council members, thank you so much for having us here. I also have with me Linda Webster, who's the Assistant Registrar of Voters, and she's key in this move forward to vote centers. So I'm excited to kind of talk a little bit about what we're doing and the county and how we're moving towards vote centers, which is going to change the way people vote in the county. Hey, I've got the clicker and it works, and that's terrific. I can never operate these things well. So I just kind of want to go through real briefly the history of it's kind of called SB 450, which is Senate Bill 450 that was passed in 2016 that allows counties to go to vote centers. How our voters currently vote in El Dorado County, as well as the cities of Placerville and South Lake Tahoe, the improvements that voters will see, the community support, and the implementation in this county, how we're going to be doing this, and then open it up for questions. So SB 450 requires that for every 50,000 voters that we have in the county, we have one vote center that's open for 11 days, and that's 10 days prior to Election Day plus Election Day. That it also requires an additional, for every 10,000 voters, a vote center that's open for 4 days. That's 3 days prior to the election and Election Day. So in our county, we're going to have about 13 vote centers. There may be 14. We're kind of on the fence on the 14th one. Plus, we're also going to have what we call pop-up vote centers. So that's going to be a vote center that we go open up in a region that couldn't support a 4-day vote center, 11-day vote center, but there's still a large voter base there. So we'll arrive, we'll set up for a day, some places 2 days, so that voters can come in and vote and do other services that they can do at our office. We're also going to have, for every 15,000 voters, we're going to have one drop-off box. So currently there's a drop box in our in the parking lot at our building, at Building C. People drive up, drop their ballot in. We've gotten tremendous feedback from our voters on how much they like that and how convenient that is. So we're adding more of those drive-up drop boxes throughout the county. There's going to be one at Mosquito Fire. There are going to be 2 permanent ones in Tahoe, and then 1 permanent one also in Cameron Park at the library. Then we're also adding additional drop boxes that will be in grocery stores, in other public buildings, other locations throughout the county where people already go. So they can just bring their ballot with them, drop them in a box. They don't have to drop it in the mail if they don't want to. And we'll have people going around picking up all those ballots throughout that 28-day period. Here's currently how it looks in our county, the voter registration. So as you can see, the red line, so the gold line on the top is basically the voter registration for the county. So you can see as voter registration slowly crept up, the number of voters in red that were voting by mail went up dramatically. The number of voters going to polling places, I'm pointing at it when I have this little laser thing. So this line shows the number of people going to polling places was decreasing tremendously, and the number of people registering to vote by mail was going up tremendously. So what it was showing us is that the number of people that want to go to a polling place was really starting to drop off, and yet we would have up to 100 polling places, 106 polling places throughout the county. So about 80% of our voters already receive a ballot by mail, and that's critical in SB 450 because the first thing that SB 450 does is everybody now gets a ballot in the mail. So 100% of our voters will get a ballot in the mail. We are already sending it to 80%. The turnout for vote by mail voters was significantly higher. So the number of people that were eligible to vote by mail returning their ballots was, in the previous election that we had in June for the Senate District 1, 94% of the ballots that we received back were from vote by mail. Only 6% of people showed up at the polling place. So it's a significant increase in turnout. Voters that have continued to return these VBM ballots, 64 were returned in 2002, and now we get over 22,000 that are returned at the polls. So people are now dropping their ballots off at the polls and using those as a drop location as opposed to a voting location. And a lot of the feedback we get is people are concerned about the post office getting the ballots back in time. So now they don't have to worry about that. They can just drop it off. Ballots are also now postage paid, so they can just drop it in the mail. They don't have to worry about finding a stamp or doing going to the post office. So in 2018, we had almost 10,000 ballots that were dropped off at the drop box at Building C. So now we're going to be able to take that one drop box and spread it throughout the county and have 9 to 10 drop boxes that people can then drop their ballots off. So we're expecting to see a real heavy turnout at the drop boxes. The other issue that we've run into a lot is the increase in provisional ballots. Now, provisional ballots are people who show up at the polls. They were issued a mail ballot, but when they get to the polls, they say, well, I want to vote. Well, we have to make them provisional because we don't know if they turned in their ballot or not. So we make them a provisional voter, and then we check that provisional or that voting status after the election, and then count their ballot if they hadn't already turned in a ballot. Under the vote center model, we don't have to do that anymore. It's real time. Somebody walks into the vote center, they're connected. The vote centers are connected to our voter registration system, so they can look that voter up and know right then and there whether they've turned in a ballot or not. So they don't have to issue it as a provisional ballot. The person can vote their ballot and put it in the drop box. Obviously, there's a big technology component to that we're working through, but it's working. Everything's looking really good. Sacramento County did this, our close neighboring county, in 2018. Nevada County did this. They saw a significant decrease in the number of provisional ballots. They went from about 1,500 to I think it was 7, which is great for the voter, and it's great for the elections department and the results, reporting of results. So the improvements for voters, as I mentioned, every voter is going to receive a ballot in the mail now. It provides more days, so people will go to their polling location, but it was only one day. It was only election day, and they could only do certain things there, and they had to go to the vote center that they were assigned to, or the polling place that they were assigned to, because it was very, we had to keep track of all the ballots that went out, and it was very limited technologically on what we could do. Well, now with vote centers, you can go to any vote center in the county. So if you happen to be in Tahoe and you go up there to, view the sites, and you say, you know what would make this day great? I'm going to go vote. They could go to a vote center up in Tahoe. They can walk in, we can look them up, we can issue them their exact ballot, and then they can vote that ballot right there. Any vote center in the county you can go to and vote. If you're on your way back from Folsom, which I don't know why anybody would go down that far, but if you are, then you can stop at any vote center on your way and you can vote. So it's a lot more convenient. You can register to vote there, become a conditional registered voter and vote a ballot, which currently you could only do at our office. You can drop off or surrender your ballot that you got in the mail and be issued a new ballot, or you can walk in with no ballot. They can look you up, see whether you voted or not, and then issue a ballot. It's also, since they're open up to 11 days, they're open on the weekends. So the 11-day vote centers are open Saturday and Sunday, 2 weeks in a row. The 4-day vote centers are open Saturday and Sunday and Monday before the election plus election day. So, and we're going to change the hours on some of the vote centers to try to catch people who are coming home from work so that it's open later at night. It's open during the week, so if they're out shopping or doing something else, they can come into the vote center. So it makes it far more convenient for voters. And voters that enjoy the polling place experience, which we get a lot of feedback, people are afraid they're going to lose that experience. It will still be the same. And something that we're doing, excuse me, that we're really excited about is we're working with community organizations like the Lions Club, Rotary, Kiwanis, and we're putting together a program where they can we call it Adopt a Vote Center. So that club can come in, we'll do all the training, set up all the equipment, they will just be our vote center workers. And the money that we would normally pay to poll workers would go to that club. So it can be a fundraiser for them. Plus they can own that vote center. They can do what they want with that vote center. As long as it's nothing political, they can make it their own vote center, make it enjoyable, make it a fun experience for the people that are coming in. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback on that, and we're just working through the details now at the county level to figure out how we make that happen. So people who like the polling place will get to still experience a polling place. So as I mentioned, it's open on weekends. It's open for 11 days. The 3 of them will be open for 11 days. We're going to have a vote center right here in this building. It'll be a 4-day vote center. We're going to have an 11-day vote center down at Building C that will be open from the Saturday a week and a half prior to the election right up through election night. And then, as I mentioned, we're going to have drop boxes throughout the county that people can just drop their ballots in the mail or drop their ballots in the box. So here's kind of an idea of where some of the drop boxes and vote centers may go. I think we have most of these locked down. The Welcome Center in El Dorado Hills is going to do an 11-day vote center for us, which I think is going to be a great synergy. People come to El Dorado Hills will be right there on the main street. We've got the Cameron Park CSD. Cool Fire Station is one that we're trying to decide. That one may or may not end up being a vote center just because some of the logistics of securing the equipment. But we're going to do a pop-up vote center out in Cool. So people can come in. We're going to do that at the grocery store there. So people can come in and vote at the grocery store. South Lake Tahoe Airport, they also have a drive-up drop box. So you can see there's a lot of locations we've been looking at, and we've been out visiting every location and checking for internet connectivity and other things that we need. Drop box locations, Cameron Park Library is going to be a permanent one, Mountain Mike's Pizza. So there's just a lot of great places that we're trying to get these in. So this is kind of a map, although it's from here, I need binoculars to see it, but there's some kind of locations up there. We dropped pins where these drop boxes will be. And then this is the same thing with vote centers. This is kind of just maps out that list that we had showed you. This is kind of a sample layout of what a vote center might look like. So we're required by law to have 3 accessible machines in each vote center. And an accessible machine is somebody with an impairment, a physical or visual impairment, could come in and vote completely privately and independently. So we'll have 3 of those at every location. We will have voting booths at every location, and then we'll have check-in stations and registration stations. So with the technology that's available now, we can issue any ballot to any voter from anywhere in the county right at one location, which really makes this possible. we went through a process of deciding whether we were going to do this or not. We got a wide variety of people together because we also replaced the voting system, and Regina was kind enough to be on that committee as well as voting on the vote centers. So we had representatives from the League of Women Voters, Republican Central Committee, Democrat Central Committee, people, just voters from the county. We had members of our IT department, elections department, the CAO's office, and this whole group came together, selected a voting system, and then voted to move to vote centers after going through the training on what vote centers were. And they're very excited about it. We've been out talking with a lot of people. There is concern. There's security concern. This is a more secure form of voting than we've ever had. And it's more secure because you can look up every voter when they walk in the door and know whether they have voted yet or not, and not have to make them provisional. It's more convenient for voters, and any voter that had to vote provisionally previously, now they may not have to. So they know immediately, here's my ballot and it counts. So I think that's a very important benefit to the community. So we're just out trying to spread the word, let everybody know what we're doing, getting feedback on anything we can do differently. And then we're going to be rolling this out for March. So you'll start seeing vote centers pop up. I think it's February 20th is our first one opens, somewhere right around there. And then it's just going to be on from there. It's going to be a pretty wild year next year. But we're excited about it. So that's it. I hope I stayed within my time limit. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Email, call, text, smoke signals.
Bill, thank you very much. This is an exciting, massive improvement, a huge change to voting in coming to us soon in March. It'll be here before we know it.
Yeah.
I think Councilmember Borelli had a question for you.
I do. It is exciting, but I had one question when you kept saying about the provisional that they can check, make sure that. So what though is going to? How is a without having you go in and sign the register and everything? How are you going to know that person that sent in that ballot is really that person, and that maybe it wasn't, especially like with older folks that maybe, what's to keep somebody who's in charge from collecting everybody's ballot and just going ahead and filling it out, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, so there's a couple things. If somebody comes into the vote center, they'll still have to sign a roster just like they did before. People who mail in their ballots, we follow the same process that we would follow right now with mail ballot voters. When they send in their ballot, we verify the signature on the envelope to the signature that's on their registration
so they have
card.
to put their signature on the.
They have to sign the envelope, yeah. So if you're a
okay.
mail ballot voter, you sign the envelope. If the
Okay.
signature doesn't match, then we send them a postcard and say, hey, your signature didn't match. Can you return the postcard?
Okay. See, you can tell I don't vote by mail.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's how we
I'm
know.
old-fashioned. I love to go to the.
And you can come right here and,
Okay.
and vote.
We'll have to make sure she only comes once.
She can come as many times as she wants. She'll
I
only
just
get to
can't
vote
vote.
once.
I just can't vote that many times.
That's an old Chicago story. They
Okay,
can't vote
I
on
did
early,
not
vote
realize
often.
that you had to sign the.
Yeah, every absentee ballot, which actually increases the security in many ways.
Oh, okay.
It's a good question.
Thank you.
Karen, did you have any questions? I know.
I
Dennis.
don't. Thank you
All
for
right.
your presentation. This sounds
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you, Patty. Now we know to watch you. Very
Yeah.
good. Dennis, did you have a question?
I truly appreciate your enthusiasm about voting. I haven't thought about it nearly as much as you have, that's for certain. And,
I am
and
an
so
election geek.
It's nice that somebody cares about it, because most people just go and vote and don't really think about it that much. And so, but, the idea of voter harvesting and what can you kind of help me understand the how that works, or why it's allowed, or what your thoughts are on that?
Yeah, so ballot harvesting it's a new term that really kind of came out of the 2018 election cycle. The way things used to be was people could return ballots for family members or household members, and it was literally written that way in the legislation. So, if I had an elderly parent that couldn't get to the polling place, but they received a ballot by mail, they could complete their ballot, they could put it in their envelope and sign it, and I could take it in and drop it off for them, or other members of my household. And that's pretty much always been allowed. What changed was, and I believe it was in 2016 or so, they made a change to legislation that said anybody can return your ballot. And the purpose behind that was if somebody is disabled or they can't get out of their house or if they are unable to return their mail ballot for some reason, then somebody could take it for them. A neighbor could take it, or they could have a friend come by, or pretty much anybody could come pick it up, or even, you know, a disability rights group could go around and collect for their constituents. What happened when, and I think it was an unintended consequence of it, was then political parties decided, well, now we can do it. So they would go out and start collecting ballots, and they know who's returned and hasn't returned, or who has voted and hasn't voted, because they can get this information ahead of time. It's all public information. So then they could go out to people who hadn't voted or hadn't returned a ballot and say, hey, why don't you fill out that ballot and we'll take it in for you. While that may or may not be a good thing, I can't really say. My goal is everybody we send a ballot to votes that ballot. It's like throwing a huge party and then 20% of the people show up. That's really disappointing. But with ballot harvesting, there can be some nefarious stuff that happens with that, and it has happened with that. I think it was North Carolina, there were some issues where people were handing over ballots that were not put in an envelope, hadn't been sealed, hadn't been voted. So these people were taking these unvoted ballots in a signed open envelope, filling out the ballots and then sealing the envelope and turning them in. They did get caught, and they have gone to trial over that. But it's a concern that everybody has. I think anybody who pays attention to the importance of the sanctity of an election would be concerned.
Do you have any mechanisms to protect against that at this time, or just how do you keep an eye out for it? Or
They have to sign them, that's what he told me. You have to sign.
That, you know what, that is, there's two things we can do. The signature is one of them. It has to be signed. The second thing is voter education, and the Secretary of State's office put out a really good video that I believe we've linked to on our website. And it tells people, don't give anybody an unopened, signed envelope with an unvoted ballot in it. Fill out your ballot, put it in the envelope, seal the envelope, and sign it. So education is probably going to be our biggest defense against this, unless they decide to change the legislation back to the way it was. The problem is, even with the way it was, somebody could come to one of our drop boxes and drop 50 ballots in there. We don't know, and we also don't know that it's not okay, that they didn't do this perfectly legally. We've never seen that in our county. We'll see people come in with 2 or 3 ballots, and it's their spouse or it's their parent or it's something, but we've never seen people coming in with boxes of ballots. Like Orange County did see that, where people are turning in hundreds of ballots. So we've just got to educate voters on be smart. It's, you know, I always learned, you treat that ballot like it's $1 million bill. You don't let anybody else have it, and you don't share it with anybody, and you keep it for yourself, and you vote it and send it in.
thank you.
Good question, Les. Michael, did you have
Yeah, and just a couple of comments too from what he just brought up, which is
Dennis.
it was no, I know it was. I was trying. I had 2 things on my mind at the same time. Sorry, Dennis. It was absolutely. It was absolutely not an unintended consequence that this was allowed to happen. It was purely a political move so that you'd be able to
changing that
to be able to get ballots harvested in close elections. That's why you'll see on election night in areas that has contested elections where you had partisan elections that were close. Even if you had a 5,000 to 6,000 vote lead on election night, you really couldn't say that you were going to win, because literally thousands and thousands of provisional ballots were turned in for one party. And in the old days, provisional ballots generally followed what the registration was in any given county. Now you'll have it where 90% of a provisional ballot might be for one political party. And so it was absolutely an intended consequence to be able to do this so that you could have a political advantage over another opponent. There's one question I had, and this is just, is the cost, because I know they passed the legislation as well so that it's free to send your ballot back. Is that a cost to the county, or is it a reimbursable cost from the state for those that choose to send it back in the mail?
It's a cost to the county.
It's a cost to the county.
Yeah.
So all the more reason to have as many of these locations to drop off and to collect them prior to having someone drop it in the mail, because that's a general fund hit, I would imagine.
Yeah, and that's another reason that we had made the decision to go this way and have that many drop boxes to try to reduce some of that cost. It's expensive. I think it's about 72 cents or so to get it back. Yeah,
It's more than a stamp.
Yeah.
yeah.
Good question.
Thank you.
I'm going to really test Bill now. Do you happen to have any idea what the postage fee was on the last, in any of the recent elections?
I would say in June it was about business reply mail. Yeah. Yeah, so it was about a $20,000 initial, and that was a pretty low turnout election.
So it's a substantial amount of money.
It's quite a bit. I think
Yeah.
it averages about 72 cents per ballot to be returned.
Very good.
Yeah, it's
Well, we look
not-
forward to seeing this new system roll out.
me too.
Is there any other questions? Is there any member of the audience that has a question on what Bill has presented to us tonight, the future of voting in El Dorado County? Are we following the patterns of a lot of counties in March, or are we still out in front of these changes, or?
We're a little bit ahead. 5 counties did it in 2018, and there's about another. I want to say it's about nine counties that are going in 2020.
All right.
So we're in the first. We're in the second wave, but really in the first group.
Well, that's kind of where El Dorado County voting has always been. The elections department has always been highly regarded.
Yeah, Bill Schultz was an amazing registrar.
And we look forward to many years of your service. This
Thank
is
you.
probably the most sacred obligation that we have as citizens. And sitting up here as an elected and having gone through, when people vote for you, there's very special trust that's passed along. So we
Yeah.
appreciate the thoughtfulness and thinking for the future in being able to ensure the safety and the accessibility for our voters to get out there and vote.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I am an election geek, and the department is just incredible. The folks that have been in that department for years, one of them 3 decades, are just amazing people.
Yes.
Yeah, I walked
Okay,
into a
well,
great
and
special
Regina, I want to
situation.
ask, you're still going to be our elections clerk for the city elections?
Yes, I will, yes.
Okay, good. She has done an outstanding job, and she's been able to answer any question that I've had. So, all right,
Yeah.
thank you. I have a hand up in the back. Is it a question that,
It's a quick question.
we have a small audience.
Nothing to do with El Dorado County.
Well, come on up,
Come up
so,
to the
come on up, so,
I just,
and Jennifer
And
Chapman's
it doesn't
about-
have to do with the governor either, but I just want to actually ask about recall elections. This has come up in a context that has to do with homeowners associations and totally separate, but because there aren't very detailed election rules for homeowner associations, and there's actually a Senate bill right now, state Senate bill, that's trying to address part of it, but not all of it. So I just wanted to ask about, with recall elections, as you understand it, does that work as a one ballot process? What I've heard is that it does in some counties, and it does at the state, meaning that if there's going to be an effort to recall an elected official, that you both on the ballot, you both have the recall yes or no, as well as the replacement, potential candidates.
All right.
And anyway, like for instance, the
Yes.
Gray Davis Arnold Schwarzenegger example was brought up, in this other community, and that had like 135 candidates. But anyway, I just want to ask about the recall election scenario.
Thank you, Jennifer.
So the recall it's a single ballot, and it has both shall they be recalled, yes or no, and it has the candidates listed on there. So yeah, and there's some recall petitions out there, I think, as everyone's aware. So, that's a possibility.
Very good. More business. All right.
Secretary of State's office and election code manages all that stuff.
Bill, maybe you could get with Jennifer. Jennifer, I'm sure would be happy to come over to your office.
I have a card.
All right. We'll let you take that part offline. Is there any other questions for Bill? Well, again, on behalf of the council and all the citizens, we thank you and welcome you aboard, and look forward to an exciting and successful and high turnout in March, huh? I hope so. We'll get our fingers crossed. All right, thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. All right, that brings us on to item 3.3, brief comments by the city council. Are there any brief comments this evening? Okay. Michael? Kara?
I don't have any comments, but would this be the appropriate time to talk about the power outage?
Yes, we're going to get to
Okay.
that in just a minute. Patty, did you have anything
I was gonna ask
outside?
about that too,
No, you
so-
can't ask any questions. You voted twice.
No, I said, I was going to ask about that too.
Oh, right. Well, she's the owner of a new generator. Be giving that address out later. All right, 3.3, yeah, this is the time to probably talk about what faces our community in the next 12 to 24 hours. And Cleve and I have, and Vice Mayor Saragosa have kind of been in and out of communication most of the day in getting the latest information from PG&E. I won't call them updates because they are very slow and not necessarily very detail-oriented. Cleve, do you want to hit anything in particular, or do you want me to just, I could start out by saying that, well, I would like you to go ahead and address what you have done with your department managers and how that is going to play into making sure that all of the city services move forward as uninterrupted as possible.
Sure. Just briefly, I'll just take a couple of minutes. As far as how the city has prepared for this, all of our city services will remain open. All of our services have backup generator power, with the exception of City Hall. Does not have backup generator power. We will keep that building open. Our telephones will work. We can answer phones, so if you have questions. Our computer system will be down during that time. For things like taking payments and issuing permits, taking payments for utility bills should not be a problem. We'll be able to do that. We just will not be able to give you current balances and stuff like that you might need information for. Permits on the second floor, Pierre could talk more to this, but if they're simple permits, water heater, roof permit, re-roof permit, things like that, simple ones, we should still be able to do those. Ones that don't require any investigation or review, or very little anyway, we'll be able to do those. Encroachment permits on the third floor should not be an issue if they're pretty standard permits there also. Fourth floor will remain open for whatever we do up there, right, Regina? We're a city clerk and an IT on that floor. Town hall, this building is fully up and operational on backup generator. Police department, same thing. Our wastewater treatment plant, the same, and we have some services up at our public works yard on backup generator also. We have made arrangements for fuel to keep all of our generators up and running. A big question that came out the last time this happened was the traffic signals on Highway 50. Both Caltrans and PG&E has assured me that they've made arrangements to have backup generators on those this time, and they will remain functional throughout the scenario. We have offered, if need be, that we will help keep those fueled up for them, so we'll be prepared to do that. Nick in our Public Works Department has made those arrangements. So I think we're ready for this. I mean, there's always surprises. I'll let our police chief talk to anything that we may anticipate in terms of public service. Oh, the final thing I mentioned, I have asked Public Works on those traffic signals that are off the main highway that are in town, we will be looking at putting flashing beacons with stop signs to, and if they go completely out, indicate that it is a four-way stop. So with that, I think that we are prepared. Mayor, I'll let you talk about scenarios of when we think what may happen, or we can do that together in a minute.
I think we'll do that together.
Okay.
I'd like to, Nick, did you have anything to add from a public works crew standpoint? Men up on the hill.
No, sir. I think Cleve covered it all.
All right.
I think we're as ready as we can be up there.
Excellent. Chief, did you have patrol cars are filled and?
So for the police department, our building's on a generator. Everything will work in the building. So we'll have routine operations as normal, and we have made arrangements to have our cars completely gassed up as needed. We're not going to have any additional staffing on at this time. We don't anticipate problems because things will still happen, routine calls will still come in. But our 911 center will be fully operational, as will our front desk. There may be some databases that we don't have access to, but for emergency services, we'll be fully prepared and ready to go. Unless you have any other questions, Mr. Mayor.
No, sir, that's excellent.
All right.
No overtime will be incurred.
I didn't say that, but we'll work on that.
Cleve, one thing we should hit on is the water systems, the fact that we have our own water system and we purchase all our water from EID, and they have reached out to us and they have asked us to curtail. You want to hit the...
Correct. If you're part of EID's system, you should have already received that notification from them. If you're part of the city system, we have set out notices with our social media that we've implemented today. We recognize that maybe not quite everyone is on that. We're trying to get that word out as much as we can. We'll continue that tomorrow. Their request is simply that you not use any unnecessary water. Water service will still be there. There are just some functions, as I understand it, that they, in terms of treatment, I guess, that they may not be able to do during this time, or not be able to do to the full capacity that they would normally be doing. They do have backup generators on a lot of their system. They will still be providing water, and there shouldn't be any major interruptions. But they've been filling the storage tanks, if you will, in anticipation of the power going out. And if it were to go a full 5 days, it may be a little bit stretching their resources. If it's shorter than that, they think they will be fine. So
that brings up the point that it'll be important for all of us to stay in touch with whatever form of communication we want if this thing does stretch out more than, say, 2 days, because the third or fourth, fifth day could certainly become a whole series of situations that we couldn't even imagine right now. Hopefully that won't be the case, but we will update as we have information available, correct?
The city's website, as well as our Facebook page, and then the police department has their Nixle releases that they do, plus Facebook and Twitter, correct, Chief? All of those, so hopefully you're tied into one of those. You can also get alerts on the police department app. You can sign up for those online on your phone. There's if you search your app store, you can find the Placerville Police Department app and sign up on there. We'll try to get regular updates on that. On our website, we implemented an alert that goes across the top of the screen, a red alert that you can click on, and we'll have all of the updates that we receive on those, including the one I received just about 10 minutes ago from.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. No changes, essentially, but yes.
Okay. Last thing then is the big question is when might this occur? And the information that we're getting, or we got from PG&E this afternoon, suggests that if the wind levels reach their criteria, the outages could start in western El Dorado County tomorrow morning.
Yeah, actually start at midnight tonight and continue, they're saying, through 4 a.m.
So areas like
But it
Shingle
could extend
Springs
longer
and-
than that, depending on the wind event.
Yeah. So a couple of things that are different this time. PG&E is shutting down the transmission system, which is the ultra-high voltage system, which is the heart of all the feed. It's an extraordinary step in my mind to de-energize that equipment. It certainly is going to increase their costs and lengthen the outages. They also have, for this event, a 25-mile-an-hour sustained wind threshold. Forecasts that were issued here at 5:30 by CAL FIRE and the National Weather Service showed about an 18-mile-an-hour wind gust for Placerville Wednesday night and Thursday morning. While I shared that joy with Cleve, he reminded me that because the transmission system is now in play, if any part of PG&E's transmission system in the Sacramento Valley that feeds El Dorado County is being subjected to 25-mile-an-hour winds, which is unfortunately where the winds will be focused, we could be here with practically no wind and no electricity. So this is very different than what happened last October when Acting City Manager Rivas and myself muddled our way through with no communication from PG&E and no keys to City Hall. But the extent of this
Cleve, you'll never live that down.
I know.
They are suggesting that 880,000 customers could be affected if their wind forecasts confirm out in the field through tomorrow. I have to wonder if that'll actually cause the demise of the company before they realize what
Mark,
they've
they
done.
did announce, the last news show or program that I watched, they did say exactly what you just said, explaining to people that just because they don't see their leagues wrestling, don't get mad at, you know.
Yeah, well, you can still get angry, but we still need to read those letters. So anyway, what we were looking at is an event that should begin to unfold west and north of us, starting late tonight, tomorrow morning. So we should be able to see this thing coming. So we're kind of sitting on the southern edge of which I personally don't think it's going to. Those wind conditions will not occur here. But again, if our transmission lines 20 miles from here is getting a wind, they're going to shut it off. So we will update in the morning. The last information that I got suggested that all of Placerville could go dark tomorrow afternoon between 5 and 6 o'clock. And that outage would occur probably within about a minute. The substation would just be de-energized. So every circuit out of Placerville would be dark. Diamond Springs would be dark. Shingle Springs, they're going to basically shut the whole county down. So I don't know, Chief, if from an emergency standpoint, that sort of an outage is pretty unusual to have a complete black community within seconds. So that ought to be a very interesting event. I'm hoping it doesn't occur, but
I'll just add that I'm glad we're not in the Bay Area or Southern California, where they're going to turn all the power off as well. The traffic there, I was just looking at the map, it's already a mess. So
yeah,
it'll be bad, but people just need to be patient if they're driving around up here.
yeah, and I want to just end with a message that I sent to our government rep with PG&E this afternoon. His name is Brandon Sanders. Brandon, the city of Placerville is committed to protecting its citizens and employees during this emergency. We will depend on PG&E to share their latest data and operational information as this event unfolds. Clear, accurate information is crucial to help reduce the impacts of any PSPS event. While PG&E is focused on wind damage, we will keep Placerville systems operating safely and responding to calls for assistance from our citizens. We know our surrounding county neighbors will be depending on Placerville to provide the needed services and supplies during an extended outage, a role we play with great pride. I remain hopeful that the wind speeds do not reach your thresholds in the Placerville area and that PG&E can safely leave its equipment energized. We look forward to working with you safely through this event. So I think that's the attitude that we need to get through the next couple of days, and then after that we will sort out the issues as we've uncovered them. So if there's any, Cleve, the next update from PG&E should be?
Probably tomorrow morning now. I'm not
Okay.
sure. We might receive one more tonight, but
What
the
about the
latest
school
is not
closure?
changed.
I have no idea about school closures. We aren't.
Well, I have heard that, Patty, you said that schools are,
Well, that's
they've
what,
announced
that's
are
what the news
closed.
said, that El
Let the
Dorado
schools
School.
announce their own things. You know,
I
I don't
guess
think
it
we
would
want to
be-
get involved.
Yeah, for the schools,
Yeah.
if you have kids in schools, I just encourage you to check with
Call
them.
the school.
'cause, yeah.
Call your school.
Mayor, if I could, I just want
Yes, sir.
to maybe announce also that PG&E is opening a community resource center
Thank you.
at the fairgrounds, where they'll have an area with air conditioning. You can get water, charge your phones or other things that you need to charge there. That will be running, starting, I believe, opening tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock. And will run through the duration of the event also, so.
Do you have any information on the cellular towers and their ability to stay on during this time and the ability for access through that?
Most of them have generators.
I do not. It's my understanding that Verizon at least has generators, and I'm assuming AT&T does also, but I don't know that for sure.
All right.
That should be interesting. All right. So pay close attention tomorrow as the day unfolds.
I got a couple questions.
Yeah.
Are there any radio stations that people can expect to get updates on that the public should know about?
Old fashioned.
anybody?
I couldn't say for sure.
I don't know of any.
KFBK seems to be a local one that covers the area somewhat, but that's 93.1, that's one that I've observed, but I don't know for sure.
And,
Pushing information out.
No.
And can people expect to get a PG&E notification with an estimated time of the outage, or, you know,
My understanding
as
that
it gets
PG&E
nearer?
will do that. They've already sent out notices, I believe. I know I got one for my
I've gotten
home.
some, but they were not very
Very vague,
specific. Yeah.
yes. It's my understanding that as it gets closer, that they will provide additional information.
Okay.
But
If I can add, Mr. Mayor, I would just refer everybody for questions like that, and when the outage is over, when we're going to get repowered up, PG&E is going to be your most reliable source of information, not rumors on certain social media pages. So go to your trusted source, or even the El Dorado County OES page. So.
Yeah, good point, Chief. We want to be only sharing information that we know is accurate, just like the school closures and any cancellations. Please go to the sources of those. So, but know that we will be making sure the city stays as operational as possible.
She has a question.
Sure. Come on up, please. Please come up to the podium. And, pardon me? Come on up. You're going to speak later, and you've got a sign.
On a good note, it's going to be a full moon.
Yeah, I saw that last
so
night.
That's going to be a good thing.
Well, that helps us that are used to this stuff, right? All these things are on our side. All right, if there's no other questions on that, we'll move on to closed session report. Mr. Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight, the council considered in closed session actually two claims by Mr. George Carpenter. Both claims are of the same issue and are substantially the same. One was filed in November of last year. The other was filed in March of this year. With all members of the council present, the claims were unanimously rejected.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion for adoption?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Ceremonial matters, we have none this evening. Item 7, public comment. Mr. Morris, was there any written comment this afternoon for the council?
And no, not at this time.
All right, thank you, sir. And this brings us on to item 7.2, oral communication. This is a time in the meeting when any member of the public that wishes to address the council on a non-agendized item may do so. We ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes and limit your subject matter to items pertinent to the business of the city council. Please come forward and state your name. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name's Ed Ingram. I live over on Clay Street behind the bus station. We're just trying to bring to light to the City Council something that's been growing for quite a while, the impact of traffic on the weekends. Just so you know, we're not targeting Apple Hill or wineries or any other special events. This is just something that's people have been learning on their iPhones through Waves and that to bypass the congestion on Highway 50. And a lot of people in our area don't agree that Clay Street is an alternate route for Highway 50 with the impact and noise that we have and the destruction that's going to happen to our roadways, more additional repairs. I mean, they're in disarray right now, but we took a few videos Sunday, my wife and I did, and in per hour, the traffic increased. This is just an estimated that we did on a cell phone of 120 cars per hour between the hours of 12:30 and 5:30 p.m. Talking to, which also I've had some good results from Cleve Morris, city manager. Commander Wren has been working with us on this, trying to help us out and give us some ideas to work with, and have placed some barricaded signs, which seems to have some effect to the traffic, wanting to use these arterial roads on the outside, and use one of their patrol cars stationed out just for visibility to try and slow down the traffic. The traffic's been some very rude to the public up there that live there. Some are pretty good. The speeding, as you go up Clay Street, you really got to put your foot into it to get up there, some of them think, but you don't really have to. So with a big concern with everybody in the Clay Street, the Coleman, Locust, Mosquito, this is a big arterial area over here that's primarily resident. It's not a alternate route for Highway 50 traffic. In an emergency situation, if Highway 50 were to shut down, that's understandable. It's reducing our emergency response to people up there with the Cottonwood Senior Apartments and other emergency response for anything that might happen with that added traffic. We got a few suggestions. There's been some barricades with some signage that seem to work a little bit, just catching our attention, but the visibility is a little tough. If we had these on some signage a little bigger, more visible, I think we'd have probably a little better impact on this traffic. Some do look at it and avoid those areas by looking at it. A lot of them don't, because they got their Waves or Google Map or whatever. They just go on trying to get away. Maybe some CMS message boards or some electronic message signs strategically located to Route 50 or wherever to reduce them from these public areas and residents. My wife bought some signs, displayed there, we put up in the residents' yards to help reduce the traffic speeding and more safety for the public in the areas. God, I'm out of time, holy cow. Speed bumps, maybe if the engineering can work with us a little bit, some rumble strips, the temporary ones to try and reduce the speeds also. Close westbound Clay Street like they do on the National Night Out. I don't know if it's possible, but these are just ideas. And the other idea is to create a task force within different agencies to work together to try and create something that to reduce all this impact that we're having. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. We know you've always worked with the city on a number of issues in your neighborhood, and we appreciate your
Well, one of the other issues I want
step
to bring up is Caltrans.
Can we have you talk into the mic? We want to make sure everybody can hear you.
Caltrans, I worked with them for 35 years. Their electricians can change these signals down here. They can customize these things day and time and hours. They can do it. I don't know if anyone's contacted them or not, but that'd be your first resource to help reduce that backlog. I've tried several times. There's a bunch of new people in there. The older ones gone, like me, retired. We had those things fixed years ago, and it worked. You just got to keep on these guys and get this thing to work. Because it's going to continue through the winter with skiers, and it's just going to be an impact for a long time.
Thank you for your comments. And thank you for your signs. Is there another member of the public wishing to address the council on a non-agendized item?
Jonathan Gainsborough. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I feel a little bit like Thomas Jefferson, which is quite a long stretch, but being put on ransom by the Barbary pirates across the Mediterranean, that our ships would be held captive with the PG&E behavior. All of a sudden they're setting a 25-mile-per-hour threshold. That's not the gist of my message here, but the 10-day forecast for both yesterday, today, and tomorrow is 5 and 7 mile-per-hour winds. The government needs to speak to them that they cannot hold us captive. But my focus here is the least, the last, and the lost, the people without a voice that are sleeping out tonight in fine weather. But I remember a lady saying to me, if I give you money, can I sleep in your car? This was in the middle of the winter. Another lady I ran into at Round Table, I was watching a Warriors game, Go Warriors. The first game is October 24th. But moving right ahead, the lady said to me, I said, you're homeless? She said, yes. I said, can't you go to the police station or to the emergency room? She said, no, they won't take me. And she said to me, she said, I said, you can't be out there tonight. She said, yes, I'm going to have to. She said, I hope I die. I hope I freeze to death tonight. This is a lady maybe 20 or 25 years old. Parenthetically, this October 8th through the 15th is National Mental Health Awareness Week. So speaking to the supervisors this morning as well for the homeless and the need for an immediate shelter, even if it's just Tuesday and Wednesday night. But next week being the 15th, if you would contact NAMI and give them an invitation to make some kind of proclamation for National Mental Health Week next Tuesday would also be, of course, here only every other Tuesday. Well, moving right ahead, in the book of Matthew, as I only have a minute or so to speak, Jesus said that when the Son of Man returns, he will separate the sheep from the goats, and he will put the sheep on his right hand, the goats on his left, and he'll say, either come ye blessed, or depart from me, you wicked. And he says, because he will say, I was hungry, and you didn't feed me. I was thirsty, and you didn't give me to drink. I was homeless. Let me repeat that. I was homeless, and you did not take me in for shelter. Then they will say to him, Lord, when did we see you thirsty, hungry, or homeless, without shelter? And he will say, inasmuch as you did not do it for the least of these, my brethren, you did not do it to me with your $22 million city budget, your $8 million discretionary budget, the county's $688 million budget. And John Nidal said to me today that the designation of the armory is under your control from the governor. And you can use the armory for a temporary shelter this winter. The need is immediate. The cry is desperate of those. There's only 10 beds at the PUF unit, but there's 100 beds in the juvie center. We have to do something for the county and the citizenry is not against a shelter. They are looking for you to stand up to the plate and provide shelter for those. And the majority of them, I deal with the homeless for the last 50 years nationally. The majority of the homeless are dealing with mental illness in different degrees. They need your help and your compassion. God bless you. I'm going to the nomadic shelter meeting now at Federated, but they said to me as I headed over here, they need help with Tuesday, Wednesday night, and now they need help with Thursday night because Discovery Hills was told by Bob over at Christ-like Services that he doesn't have the help to be able to cover them. So the government, federal government, is looking to the city and state. God bless you for your compassion and your action. Thank you.
Is there another member of the public wishing to address the council on a non-agendized item? Good evening.
Yeah, hi, this is Jennifer from Clay Street, just following up on the traffic concern and just reminding you, we have met and had this conversation a lot, and I know there's a lot of history to it, but just again, up on Canal Street, there is a nice example of some speed control up by the high school, some kind of speed bumps. There is buses using that, and there are, inclined slopes. So there's similarities to our, kind of street condition there on Clay Street. And so we really are hoping that we can get some traffic control and ways of reducing the speed. The speed, aside from these weekend phenomena, the speed is crazy, and there are just really unsafe moments that recur, and it's just there's an ongoing problem. I think you guys have some special study, which I guess we'd like to hear about. I think there is some special extra traffic study going on related to the Clay Street Bridge project, which maybe you can give us a highlight on, and then we also just want to invite probably Mayor Acuna to join us. We are planning to do some outreach to the media, just to look at the phenomenon, which Apple Hill obviously dramatizes it, and it's exciting time of year to be visiting, and it talks about visitors and tourism and all those things, but it does look at what's going on with this particular street as a kind of a offshoot of all of that. But so hopefully you'll join us. It'll probably be on a Sunday. That we'll be doing something with the media when that traffic is at its high point. But then also, if you guys can tell us a little bit, isn't it true that there's a special traffic study or extra study being done about the traffic? Because I think we highlighted this question about Clay Street being identified as a local street and Main Street and Cedar Ravine being minor arterials, and this project that is going to kind of merge Clay Street into Cedar Ravine, making it essentially a minor arterial. I think there was some extra study going on. Is that
We will see if we can
true?
get a brief answer on that later,
Okay.
when you
Well,
finish with your comments.
Well, I mean, those are the comments. I guess I was
Okay.
just hoping to hear from
And I want to see if there's-
Rebecca or Pierre about traffic study,
Since
if there
it's-
is some additional study going on.
That is not an item that we're really discussing this evening, but I
Okay.
will see if we can get you an
Okay,
answer.
well, I'll just make this one last thing, which is that, another thing with the traffic lights, and, just to consider in the conversations with Caltrans, that certain times, or maybe eliminating some of the traffic lights, just eliminating some of that left-hand turn activity and allowing traffic to go. to the right on the one side of the road and to the right from the other side, so that you're going either west or east, but not both ways, would also just help with the flow. You could at least, at certain times, just eliminate the stop in the middle of the city.
Thank you, Jennifer. Is there any other member of the public wishing to address the council on a non-agendized item? Seeing no one else approaching the podium, or close public comment this evening. I'm going to have Cleve get a couple answers regarding the armory. Dennis, did you have a question?
It was on that.
Clarification?
Go ahead.
During our 2x2 meeting, we met with the county supervisors and the CAO. And one of the things that came out of that meeting was that the armory, the governor has put a hold on the armory, basically saying that that property can only be used for housing. And it cannot be used for anything else than that. And
Affordable housing.
affordable housing. And until he removes that, that is a limiting factor on whether we could use it for any temporary housing for homeless. When it comes to the, what is the other one? The juvenile hall, there is a really sticking point in the juvenile hall in that below the juvenile hall is the juvenile court, and the juvenile court has absolute right to refuse any use of the above facility that they deem not consistent with their use, or that they feel that it's going to have a challenging aspect to the use of that juvenile court. So they have penned a letter to the county stating that they will not allow either a temporary or long-term use of housing for homeless up there. And so both of those are off the table, unfortunately, and we were looking at both of those as an opportunity to potentially have some funding. Even if they were to do that, the funding to redo the juvenile hall is somewhere between 3.4 and 4 million, depending on what program they decide to do. And then they have a $500,000 annual deficit in operation of that facility. So there's still a huge funding piece associated with that.
The juvenile hall, I mean, the juvenile justice system, is that part of the court system?
Correct.
So they're not in our jurisdiction at all. They're under the auspices of the court.
Correct. If we could find a place or a facility for them to move to, then it would eliminate that objection. However, that's a whole nother challenge.
Quick question, Dennis. With the armory, has anyone petitioned to go?
I don't want to get into a detailed discussion with this subject this evening because it's not agendized. I just wanted to give Dennis an opportunity. Unfortunately, that gentleman has left. Kara, I'm sorry. That's, there's a tremendous amount of activity. There's 2 or 3 groups that have got these focuses on these buildings, and there's absolutely nothing we can do with them. So we probably need to sit down in the dark, Cleve, when the power's out tomorrow, and work on a press release so that we can start to get ahead of. I was invited to a meeting this coming Sunday that wants to talk about using the armory for homeless. Can't happen. So there's no sense in groups spending time. So I appreciate Dennis's update on both those sites because they both pop back and forth. The other question that I wanted to see if we could get answered was the traffic studies that are going on, I don't know of any traffic studies right now on any of these streets, but maybe if our city engineer can just give us a brief update.
Good evening, Mayor, members
Good
of
evening.
the council. I'm unaware of any additional traffic study referenced by Ms. Chapman.
Okay, very good. I think what we're just seeing is an increase in Tahoe regional traffic, then an increase in just travelers, et cetera, et cetera. Having lived in the Coleman-Bedford neighborhood, the amount of traffic that's going on Coleman Street it's a sin to expect that poor old beat-up street to be used as a Highway 50 drive-around. That is just insane. That street, the trees are barely trimmed. It's full of potholes. There's all kinds of blind driveways. It's filled with old houses with narrow driveways that are all built for 1920s sized cars. And it's being used as a Highway 50 bypass. That's just criminal. And I had suggested a couple of years, and it kind of got laughed off, and that's okay, that we make Coleman a one-way street, a certain section of Coleman one-way, so that these Clay Street robbers or bypass folks will come down and they'll wind up right back out on Main Street
On
again.
Main Street.
But with the amount of the abuse that's going on out there in that little residential neighborhood, I got in that train a couple of times in the last Apple Hill seasons, and it's an impressive sight. That I guess we need to bring that back and see what we can do. I saw the barricades out there. For those that don't know, last year's barricades mostly got destroyed by irate drivers. They had profanity written all over them to our staff and to our city officials. Yeah, it was really disgraceful what happened. But that doesn't mean that it's okay.
And I agree with the signs
other
are
way.
they're too
Too
small.
small.
You can't see them either. And somehow, if we could elevate, put some kind of legs on them, and raise them because you can't see them.
Since you're probably going to leave shortly after this, later on in the meeting, I'm going to propose that we look to moving this forward and having a more meaningful discussion on this.
Yeah.
Whether everybody else agrees or not, but I would like to see that happen for Clay Street. I spent some time out there this weekend, and I agree with you 100%.
It's terrible.
Oh, it's terrible. Yeah.
Can I just make one more comment on a question that was
sure.
asked?
Go ahead.
That's regarding I just want to make the Ingrams, maybe they are aware, but Rebecca, maybe you can help me on this. The hotspot study that is currently going on for Highway 50. I don't know if we have another public meeting scheduled at this time.
We have one coming up in probably about a month or so.
Okay. The hotspot study is exactly what you're talking about, to look at what those fixes may be for Highway 50. So, if you can let Rebecca know, or I can pass on your information to her, that we'd invite you to come to those and look at what's going on there. The other point I want to make, and Rebecca can add in on this too, is that we have beat to death Caltrans on reconfiguring those signals. That has been done several times, and their comment to us at this time that they have maxed out any efficiencies that can be done to those signals. So the one problem that hurts that they brought up is when pedestrians cross at Canal and Spring Street. That can mess up the whole timing of the signals when that happens. So that's an issue, and we've looked at some options for that too, but nothing's been approved at this time. So
I couldn't hear what you said, Ed. I'm sorry. We'd love to have you. We'll make sure you know about it. But we'll let you sit right with the Caltrans folks. No, yes, it'll be great. All right, well, thank you all for your comments. Moving on to item 8 this evening, consent calendar. All matters will be considered under one item as routine, unless a member of the council wishes to have an item pulled. Is there any also items that wish to be pulled? Is there any member of the public that wishes to comment on an item on consent calendar? Seeing no one approach the podium, is someone like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move that we approve the consent calendar as presented.
Is there a second?
Kara, second.
Seconded by Councilmember Taylor. Let's see, roll call vote, please.
Mayor Acuna?
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Saragosa?
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Motion carries. Moving on to item 10, we have no ordinances scheduled this evening, and we have no public hearings. Item 12.1 under discussion action items. Approve locations and installation costs for historic Lincoln Highway signs and authorize staff to proceed with the project. Mr. Morris.
thank you, Mayor and Council. As you recall, back in May, Trey Pitzenberger made a presentation to you. He's in the audience tonight regarding the historic Lincoln Highway signs, and his association that is proposing to place signs within the city limits recognizing that historic highway. Many of you may or may not have had the chance to see the convoy that came through a few weeks ago. I know Trey was down there, or was in town when that happened. I believe the presentation or the exhibit at the Arts Council is still going on there. Did it end?
It ended, but
Okay.
I went to see it. It was very,
Okay.
very.
So what we have here is a proposal for 11 locations. It's a total of 17 signs. And we can, according to what you would like us to do, we can click on these and bring up a view of each location, or a couple of them, for example. So The first one, maybe Dave, show the stencil location, if you can click on that. That is actually at the Smith Flat undercrossing. The only thing about that one is I'm pretty sure we would have to have Caltrans approval for that to go on there. We can work on that, but that may take a little bit of time. They require an agreement to say that we'll maintain it, and we're going through that process on something else. So, excuse me. Not really an issue with that one, but it would take a little bit more time probably to get it done. So Dave, you want to go back to
That's a really good one, Dave.
location, skip that one, go to location number 1. And we can do just a couple of these to give you an idea of what you would be seeing. There we go. So this is, I think you know that location. That would be installed on a street light in that location, and it would have arrows. If you saw a close-up of it, arrows pointing in both directions down Broadway. Skip down maybe one more, let's see, Dave, maybe down to location, let's say 5. So this is at Cedar Ravine and Main Street, and you can see that would actually be 2 signs, one facing both directions. This is one of the ones that we wanted council direction on. In the past, obviously it wouldn't work in that specific location, I don't believe, because that one normally would have another banner on it, I think. I'm not sure why it's only showing one banner on that light pole, but the other issue is whether or not you are okay with these being installed on light poles. With the exception of one of the locations that already has a sign, we've kind of been reluctant to put directional signs or informational signs on our decorative light poles. There may be another option we've looked at, and I haven't been able to chance to talk to our Public Works Director about this, but perhaps we could put an extension on the top of our no parking signs or our 2-hour parking signs and install the sign on top of that. I think that's an option to us, wouldn't it be, Nick? So that may be another option if we decide that we do not want them on the streetlights. So moving on to the next one, Dave, there's a couple, maybe go to number 7, is if I remember right downtown. This is one that's right near.
5, 6, and 7 are all direct on the decorative poles.
Right. 5, 6, and 7 are all on decorative poles. I believe it's number 6 facing Bedford. There is one that there is already a sign on that pole, so we didn't see that would be a big deal. If you want to go back to that one, Dave, to put one on that one. Like I say, there is that historic district sign, so to put it above that, or downtown, I think is what that says. Maybe okay.
There are so many signs there when you drive by.
You can't see.
I have to tell you, when you really stop and look at all the information that's presented at that one moment.
It is.
People should stop for at least a minute.
So, and again, I'll allow Trey to speak to this in a minute, but I think he was just looking, to find locations where we can put these that would not require to install a new pole, because that is less expensive, but still have it identified throughout the area. So maybe go back, Dave, now, and I want to go down to Placerville Drive. So maybe locations 10 and 11 would be good ones to show that. This is one, and maybe Trey can clarify this for me. If you notice up on the top, it says original strip of the Leakin Highway. Is that part of the sign?
No, there's an original strip of the highway in Mr. Vincini's property. There's
Okay.
the actual concrete that you can see that runs about 30 feet long and is one of the last original concrete pieces of Lincoln Highway.
Okay.
That's in his property.
Okay. Thank you. I wasn't sure exactly where that was pointing to. I saw that. So, and then go to the last one, Dave. I think it's number 11. So that one would require probably a new pole to be installed with the sign. And then this one is at the museum. I'm assuming we could install that possibly on their sign, but perhaps we would have to install a new pole there also. So that's what you have. I worked with Nick to work up what we thought our costs would be to install these. You can see that at the end. We're estimating for labor, materials, et cetera, between $600 and $700. There's some variables in there in terms of where we put those and what would actually be required, but that's approximately what. It's my understanding, well, not my understanding, the Lincoln Highway Association would provide the signs, we would be responsible for installing them. And that's where that cost comes in. So with that, I don't know, Trey, any more information you'd like to add to this? You're welcome to, and that's all of my report.
If the council would like, we can add more signs as well. I came up with a number that I thought was adequate, but after seeing the enthusiasm for the project, we would be happy to add more signage if we needed to fill in the blanks. My wife and I today painted one of our logos on the Weber Creek Bridge, which is just outside the city limits, and it's the first county project we've done in El Dorado County. So we're excited. That opens it up for us. Maybe a sign by the In-N-Out Burger at the top of Forney, because that's the old road. It goes down and then crosses the Weber Creek Bridge and would connect in with our signage that we're going to put at the Weber Creek Bridge. So we are willing to offer more signs if the county is interested. And I didn't put many on poles, independent poles, because we didn't know what the policy was of the city, but some of those signs that are on light posts could be put on independent posts, perhaps. But we're willing to work with the city.
All right, thank you very much, Trey. First of all, thank you for your patience. We've almost gone through the entire year, and we're going to get this done. So appreciate your patience with us. Councilmember Burley had a question?
I have a question. Isn't there a piece of the road, it's the road, and then there's like a shale wall across from Edwards Electric on Placerville Drive?
Yes,
If you look up there, I think that's probably the most visible.
I mean, Edwards Appliance.
Edwards Appliance.
Down near Home
It's
Depot.
electric. Oh, well, it was Edwards Electric for, anyway, that's really visible.
Yes, and that's one of the first inklings that we had, that the road actually went down Cold Springs Road, because my wife and I climbed up, investigated the road, and found that it turned and goes down Cold Springs and then goes down Perot's Road. That's the old Green Valley Road. So, yes, that's the Lincoln Highway. And I think it was Pierre or Cleve mentioned about a sign in front of the loop that's near Edwards Electric, because it's one of the most visible parts of the old road. So we can get some more signs.
Well, if they want, okay. Any other questions for Trey or for Cleve? Karen, did you have any questions?
And I don't have any questions.
I had a question for Nick. Nick, how hard would it be to, because I appreciate the sense of everybody trying to utilize what's there, but I have found other sections of this, the Lincoln Highway, for example, and you follow the trail along, and if there's a certain connectivity that you have to have so that you, as a tourist, know that you're still going along correctly and what you're supposed to be looking for or where you're heading. It sounds like we maybe actually do need a few more signs. And would it be a huge deal with the right equipment to drill in a sidewalk and put a sign in so that we can get them, what I'm trying to say is that we can get them in the right places rather than saying, well, we've got a pole 100 feet down the road. It's not great, but we'll put it there. How difficult is it for your crew to put in a sign or a pole to support these signs?
It's not that difficult, Mayor. I estimate that it's probably take an hour to 2 hours for each one, just to cut a section out. Then what we do is install a sleeve right there.
Mhm.
So when somebody comes along and they hit that, it's easy for us to replace that by just pulling that sleeve out and putting a new post in. So just depending on what the material is, whether it's asphalt or concrete, but probably about an hour or two for each one.
Okay. So do we feel like, with Trey's help, if we can identify, or we should make sure we feel like we've got that continuity so that as a visitor would understand where they're supposed to be heading?
Yeah, I think there's a couple more spots after I submitted the first plan that we might add to help make that more possible. We do have an interactive map online that you can follow on your phone, but we think that it would be best in the city if we could do it with the signage and with the arrows and whatnot.
Oh, Trey, when you came earlier this year, there was a talk of you had one of the old Lincoln Highway monuments.
Right, like the head that you see at Tortilla Flats, it's moved.
Right.
We have the entire pole. We got 2 of them from El Dorado County, and the requirement was that there's a 1928 poles that were installed by the Boy Scouts back in 1928, And these were from El Dorado County, and the only stipulation is that they be remounted somewhere in the county. And of course, I thought of Placerville, being the city or county seat. So we have one of these poles available, and it would make a fantastic monument to the Lincoln Highway and also to Placerville's involvement with the Lincoln Highway. They stand about this tall. They're 300 pounds. They are reinforced with rebar, and these are the originals. So these actually did stand somewhere in the county. And Pierre and I were talking about a possible spot by the bell tower. You have a crosswalk. You have a large dirt area that's near the crosswalk that I believe was supposed to have some mining equipment or whatnot placed on it at one point. But this would be an excellent place for one of our monuments and a descriptive sign telling about the history of the Lincoln Highway and its relationship to Placerville. So I just threw that spot out as a potential.
I appreciate it, because there's an awful lot of the old photographs are centered around the bell tower, and in the certain areas you can see the fact that Highway 50, the Lincoln Highway, came right down Main Street.
Well, and if you visited the exhibit at the Arts Account, they had a wonderful explanation there on the wall, and I really do think that somewhere
Right there on.
we need an explanation. Because it's really interesting how this whole thing, I mean, a lot of people are going to say, so what's the Lincoln Highway, you know?
And I think that's what you'll find as you put the signs up, is people will ask, what does that mean? And if you put the monument in, I believe it will become a focal point of people's visits to Placerville. They'll want to have their picture taken next to it. It's a unique item. Right near the bell tower, it would be in many of the pictures that people take of downtown, and opens up a whole area for Placerville to celebrate, something that we haven't in the past. We're well acquainted with our 1850s and 60s, but this is from 1914 to 1925.
Thank you. Thank you. Question for Trey?
Thank you. Well, no, my only caution is that we have not had anything in the bulb outs that have not been ran over by a car at one time in the last 2 years.
Well, he said it weighed 300 pounds.
Yeah, and it tips over I hate to see it put in and actually hit.
Have it destroyed.
Yes, and so while that's not the best place, in my opinion, I think that downtown around that area, we certainly can find a place for it.
That's what we're looking for, somewhere downtown.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Trey? All right, I'm going to, if you'll excuse me for just a minute, I'm going to ask if there's any member of the public that wants to just comment on this item. Please come forward. Good evening, Sue.
Good evening, Sue Rodman, Placerville resident. I think that if we're going to celebrate Highway 50, then we do it. The Lincoln Highway needs to be done so that it works as a feature, not just tacked to a light pole here and a light pole there. I love the idea of putting the monument up, but I think we need to make it so that it actually has a sequence so that people can follow it and not just be, well, we got a light pole here, so let's put a sign on it. No, I think it has to be standalone. Because
like
if
the mission?
pretty soon,
like the
you end
mission
up
signs.
with, okay, you got 50 signs all along this light pole, and it looks like some of the small towns where you go and you see all the clubs that are inside the town all on this.
You can't
one
read them
sign.
all until you're going by.
No, you can't read them all, and you wouldn't be able to sort out what we've got. So I think it needs to be a project that stands on its own.
All right, thank you for your comment, Sue. Any other member of the public wishing to address the council on this item? We're running thin on audience this evening.
Hi, Kirk Smith. I think the Lincoln Highway Association deserves a commendation from all of us. They've been doing wonderful work for a very long time to chronicle the history of this important achievement and its impact in this community. So it's a project that's certainly well overdue. I do have, and it's a story I heard about many times in the family from my parents and grandparents, but I did get alarmed when I heard the talk about more signs. I love the enthusiasm, and I'm enthused about your enthusiasm, but I want some more facts. My mother would say that the posts, the markers, like the one you see across the street, were put every mile apart, not just willy-nilly. they were exactly 1 mile apart. And the reason is you have to remember cars were very primitive at that time. And the road was very primitive. You didn't need it to tell you that you were on the Lincoln Highway. There wasn't any other highway around. If you saw a road going to somebody's ranch, it was only a buckboard wide, and the highway was lucky if it was 2 car lengths wide. This is a gas gauge for a Ford. You put it in the tank. You measured it on the stick. My paternal grandfather couldn't get his Model T up Sacramento Hill because the gas tank was in the back. So the gas would go back. You couldn't be cheap when you're going up that hill or when you're going up to Lake Tahoe. So that's why the markers were there, and I would feel much more comfortable if you did some more research. And I do think it needs to be continued for a second reason. This is so important. You want wider impact. I know you've bemoaned before, as I share the concern about the lack of members of the Heritage Society, but get those people involved. They know, no matter how small the group is, they know a lot of things about such matters. So that kind of feedback would be important because I'd like to know exactly where they're going. And by the way, Patty, when you point out that one spot, I'm old enough to remember down on whatever that road's called that's parallel to Highway 50, when you go off Ponderosa Road on the south side, and then you can go into Highway 49.
South Shingle?
There are sections of that highway, Lincoln Highway, that are still wide. And I was really small, not old enough to have a watch, but it just took an extraordinarily long time to get from Sacramento and back. I don't know how long it took. Maybe you can tell me. But there just needs to be some more work and not just talk about putting in something here and something there. And none of us had the chance in the public sector to see what the sign looks like. It's not in, I read your staff report, and it did point out some of the issues, but it's really hard for us to address those issues because we don't know the dimensions, we don't know the size, et cetera. I think Mr. Thomas was mentioning about them being hit. So how high up, and would it be above a car, above a truck, et cetera? Those are things we really need to know. Be very important to have more impact from the public. Who knows if we get it, but it's good to try. And this is one of the tools they had. Anybody ever seen the inside of a Model T? I could repair it. It's so easy. You look in and you see all the way to the bottom. So, thank you.
Thank you, Kirk.
By the way, Darla Hernandez said he was talking about not being able to get up Sacramento Hill.
Mhm.
Her dad used to go up backwards because the gas tank went that way.
There's a will, there's a way. All right, I'm going to close public comment on this item and bring it back to the council for discussion and action. What's the wishes of the council? I think that we've seen the signs at her previous visits. We've seen those signs, and the Lincoln Highway Association is the Lincoln Highway Association, same signage package all across the country, correct?
Each state is different, but it's all the same in California.
Okay, very good, which makes sense. No. But it's all of these items have been approved by the Lincoln Highway Association. And they have been in existence for how long?
Since 1914.
Oh, I should have asked you to come up. I'm sorry, I was bad.
Since 1914.
Right.
Thank you. And then, again, just to repeat that you did confirm that the signage is the same throughout the state.
Oh, yes. I'm the field representative for signage for the state of California. It's my responsibility to sign the entire state with my committee. We work from the Palace of Legion of Honor in San Francisco to 2 borders with Nevada, both at Verdi and State Line. And so our job is to sign the entire route and both routes. And we plan on trying to get signs up every 5-minute driving time. Eventually, we're working toward getting this Lincoln Highway designated a state historic highway by the state of California. If that happens, we'll compel Caltrans to put our signs on the freeways. We can't do that right now. We work with the counties and the cities, and eventually we'll fill in this in with the state. But these are the same signs that are used all across the state.
Trey, you heard the concern about the need to research placement of the signs to make sure that the message was being delivered, and the old 1 mile markers.
Well, the markers were not placed every mile. They were placed by a man named Gale Hogue, who worked for the Lincoln Highway Association. He went around the country in 1928 and said where these markers would be placed, the stone markers. And they were generally placed at a corner or a place where you might make a turn. The markers are memorials to Abraham Lincoln. That's why he was allowed to put them up, because at that point, 1928, the Lincoln Highway Association was being disbanded and all roads were being numbered. That's when Highway 50 would be, when Lincoln Highway would become Highway 50. So at that point, as a final act of the Lincoln Highway Association, they sent Field Representative Gale Hogue out to say where these stones would be placed. And he has a book, we have a copy of it, and it mentions all the different spots where these stone pillars were placed. So it's not every mile. And the signs were placed wherever it was deemed necessary, where there might be a confusing corner or a place where they might need to be led. So it was done by a signage committee from the Lincoln Highway Association, and they would go out, just like we will do, and decide where the signs need to be put.
Thank you very much for that additional information.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
thank
All right,
you.
I'm going to close comments.
I have another question for him.
Okay.
I watched that, the piece that appeared on public broadcasting that they put together about, that was in '08 that was done. But that was quite an economic driver too, because it took people to small towns and that they would have never visited before. It was very, very interesting, you know, how when they came all the way across the states and all the little towns where the Lincoln Highway used to be before the freeways took over. So I think that ought to be highlighted too.
Well, Placerville worked hard to make sure the Lincoln Highway came this way in 1914. There were celebrations held, parties, a lot of work was done to make sure that highway came down this way. I think this is an opportunity for Placerville to, as we heard from some other members, to really make this into a celebration of the Lincoln Highway and an educational opportunity for our citizens. It's a whole other aspect of our history that I think has been missing and would be really welcomed by the community.
Thank you, Jerry.
I agree.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
All right. Bring that back for Council. Cleve, did you have any additional comments?
I just think that maybe we could work a little bit more with Trey to identify locations to clearly show this is the route going through. There were a couple of questions that I had as I went through that I didn't comment back to him, but maybe making sure that we're marking the route through. For example, there's no marker at the corner of Placerville Drive and Cold Springs Road. Maybe we would want to do a sign there to clearly show that that was the route, and then at Perot's again. If the council would like us to do that, we could go through and identify some of those and then try to have the signs. I would think we would want to have them somewhat, I don't know if it's 5 minutes apart or whatever, but identify maybe a standard distance that we would try to put them apart to keep some continuity. But if you'd like us to do that, I can work with probably Public Works, and we can identify spots where those could be located and bring that back if you'd like for your approval.
Is there any way we could do a different than an aerial map? I mean, that's hard for me to understand. That we could do like show the buildings, you know, if we could.
Well, the individual locations show them if you
I
click
know,
on
but
those.
it's just so hard. I liked it when we did each individual one, when Dave
Right,
was.
yeah, and I'm saying-
That really,
Right.
But if we could see like the whole, our 3 areas, maybe Placerville Drive.
Like a
down-
driving video.
A drive, yeah, something like that.
I'll take you out there. We'll drive.
Okay.
I would like to consider, at least have us, or consider that it's done with a little more intention rather than the most easiest light
Yeah.
pole to put it
Sure.
on.
Yeah, exactly.
And because I do feel like it gets lost and maybe cluttered in some of those places, and the more intentional, because it is important, and I think it adds a lot of value and goes back to the history of our town and such.
Yeah.
So.
I don't disagree with you, and I think I'd like to look at achieving both. One of the concerns I have, if you walk down Main Street and look at the number of sign poles you run into, I hate to think about putting too many more sign poles on Main Street in the sidewalks. But I think we can maybe achieve a combination of both. Again, we've got a lot of parking signs down Main Street, if those can be attached to those, on the top of those, and still, bring out the what we want to out of the sign, that may be a good option and gives us what we need, so.
So what's the direction of the council? To send it back to staff
Yeah.
for a little more clarity? Go out there with a firm intention to lay these signs out appropriately without concern for utility of existing facilities.
Okay.
And the appropriateness. It would be neat to have the same kind of signpost so that you key into, you see the post, you see the sign, you see the sign, you see the post, you're on the right track. Kind of like the mission bells and all that stuff.
Mission bills.
Yeah, all right. So
And that would
do we need a
include-
motion on that?
That would include the monument as well, to find a location that's
that-
most suitable for it.
Yeah, I think,
It's not ran over.
That's not run over,
Yeah,
exactly.
a non-renovable location. So,
More direction, do we need to, I don't think we need a motion.
we don't need a
no,
motion, do we?
I wasn't going to.
I think we can work off of what you've given me. We don't need a motion.
What's your
at this
time frame to bring this back?
We will work as quickly as we
Well,
can.
we've
I'll
waited
talk to
this
Trey
long.
and have him help us, and we'll work as quickly as we can on it.
I could have it to you tomorrow, next day.
Okay, no, not that fast.
Oh,
No, thank
Your
you,
lack of
Troy.
enthusiasm is just frightening.
that's okay.
I would think maybe not by the next meeting, but the first meeting in November, we could get it back to you.
Thank you for your patience again.
Okay.
We'll get this right, though. We're going to get this right.
And that's really the main thing. I will have patience, and it will come out right. And it's nice to know that you're interested in the monument and getting the city signed properly.
Absolutely.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you for your help. We'll look forward to seeing you in just a few weeks, and we look forward to staff getting this all worked out. All right. So with direction of the staff, we'll move on to item 12.2, adopt a resolution approving an agreement for some upgrades at the water reclamation facility. I believe the city engineer, Ms. Neves, will have this report.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor Zaragoza. Happy birthday, and council members.
That's right.
This item before you this evening is for approval of an agreement with ERS Industrial Services in the amount of $187,355 for the modular treatment unit servicing and $47,658 for the water reclamation facility pressure filter replacement for a total contract value of $235,040. The Hangtown Creek Water Reclamation Facility, or WRF as we affectionately refer to it, is what's known as a tertiary treatment plant that utilizes a series of processes up to sterilization through the use of UV lights. Treatment includes the use of sand filters and clarifiers as well. You may remember at the last council meeting, a contract was approved to repair secondary clarifier number 1. The effluent, the outgoing water from the secondary clarifiers, is piped to the modular treatment units and pressure filters to clean the recycled water up to Title 22 compliance prior to the UV disinfection. The wharf has a total of 2 modular treatment units and 4 pressure filters. Both MTUs have been in constant operation since the treatment plant's upgrade in 2008. MTU number 1 is in need of servicing and change out of the filter media. Typically, this type of service is due every 8 to 10 years, and we've hit 11 years with the current media under constant operation. I'd like to take a second to commend our wharf staff for just doing an excellent job on maintaining the plant. These guys really know how to squeeze a few extra years out of facilities. It's nothing short of spectacular to watch them in action. The contract before you also includes servicing of all 4 pressure filters that support the MTU at each of the 4 horizontal pressure vessels. Servicing of these units will also ensure that the service of MTU number 1 will last and allows for a more reliable process. If the contract is awarded this evening, work is scheduled to begin this month, ahead of the rainy season. Staff's recommendations are summarized in the report before you, and that concludes staff's report. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. One thing I do want to mention, I apologize it wasn't mentioned in the staff report, that this is a Measure H funded project, and we're very excited and grateful for those funds being available. And that's it.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. We appreciate that, and we certainly do appreciate the staff getting extended life out of all of our facilities down there. Any questions for staff? Open to public comment. Is there any member of public wishing to address the council on item 12.2?
The Measure H Committee.
The sole representative of the Measure H Committee this evening.
Yep, Measure H. Part of the reason for doing Measure H was to provide for maintenance of our facilities so that we don't end up in the pay me later, much more expensive. So I think this is, when you need to do the maintenance, you need to do the maintenance. And so this is something needs to be done. These are things that don't live forever without any maintenance. They have to be done. So go for it.
Thank you, Sue. Seeing no other members of the public present, I'll close public comment on the item and bring it back to the council for action. Would someone like to make a motion?
Move for adoption?
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Borelli and seconded by Councilmember Taylor. Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Acuna?
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Zaragoza?
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
With all these improvements at the plant, we're going to have a little mini ribbon cutting. Moving on to 12.3, adopt a resolution approving contract for some additional work for cleaning our anaerobic digester number 2. And it's important for cities to have such things. I'll turn to our city engineer yet again.
Yes, the item before you is for approval of a contract with Synagro Inc. in the amount not to exceed $59,500 for cleaning of digester number 2 at the water reclamation facility. The anaerobic digesters at the wharf date back to the original facility construction in 1962. They are a key component in the processing of return activated sludge from the secondary clarifiers. For all of you biology and chemistry fans out there, the anaerobic bacteria located in the digesters utilize food sources within the sludge to reduce the amount of potentially hazardous pathogenic life forms in the material, with the main byproducts from this process being carbon dioxide and methane gas. The methane gas is then piped and used as the primary fuel source for heating the digesters that allow further decomposition of the sludge until it can be properly dewatered and hauled away for use as agricultural soil conditioners. We leave nothing to waste. Digesters need to be cleaned every 3 to 8 years, and the last record of cleaning was in 2010, so 9 years ago. Again, our wharf staff is to be commended on their maintenance efforts. They're ever so diligent in maintenance of the city's most expensive facility. In 2017, the damage to the wharf from the storms affected the grit screen and pump, and that resulted in more rapid rate of increased grit accumulation in the digesters and damage to the mixing pump. The replaced mixing pump was purchased as part of the FEMA reimbursed project, but has not yet been installed. And the reason for that is it's recommended that the digester be cleaned prior to installation to avoid potentially damaging the new mixing pump. If the contract is awarded this evening, work would be, again, to be scheduled for October 14th. Actually, I believe they're looking at starting on Monday to avoid ahead of the rainy season. Staff's recommendations are summarized in the report before you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much. Any questions for staff? I'll open it for public comment. Any member of the public wishing to address the council on item 12.3?
Sue Rodman, Measure H, Measure L. Yeah, this is another one of our maintenance things that we need to do on a regular basis. And it would be stupid to put in a new pump when we know that it would get destroyed without cleaning out the anaerobic digester. So, I mean, this is just, it's obvious. Got to do it.
Thank you, Sue. Have to have happy bugs. Close public comment on this item and bring it back to the council for action. Would someone like to make a motion if there's no other questions?
Move to approve resolution for the cleaning of digester 2.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Mayor Acuna?
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Zaragoza?
Aye.
Councilmember Taylor?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Motion carries unanimously. And Rebecca, please let the staff down there at the plant know that the council really does recognize and appreciate that this is the most expensive facility in the city.
I will
And
certainly do that.
The ability for them to extend life and ensure that we're in compliance is deeply appreciated by this group.
I will certainly do that. Thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you. And thank you for your management of that group, too.
They're a great, great group.
Well, you're doing
Very
a great
grateful.
job, and we appreciate it. Happy bugs down at that plant. All right, item 13, council member reports from other agencies. Given the hour, do we have any? First of all, I want to apologize for not being in attendance at the 2x2. And I thank Cleve and Councilmember Thomas for working with our colleagues at the county.
Are we down to the 2x2?
Well, I just jumped there.
You jumped
Okay.
way down the
American-
bottom. Are you
American do
eliminating
that.
all the rest?
Only if you'd like to be eliminated. No, I just wanted to apologize.
Oh,
County Transit Authority, did we meet? Let's see, we
Yes,
met
we
last
did.
week. And everything's fine.
well, they presented us with some updates on what they're doing. They're constantly checking their transit routes.
They are
and
always
so, which
doing
they
that.
have to do. And I just think they do an excellent job, and I don't think we all realize how much goes into that. They also are in the process of buying some new vehicles, which they told us about, and told us about the bus stop upgrade at Pollock Pines, and told us all the rules about new electric bikes and scooter guidelines as far as using the transit buses. So it was a good meeting. It was fun going.
See what you missed, Karen?
It was fun
I
going,
don't-
and back. I felt like old times.
I don't remember having, she was having a lot of fun at Transit. It should be noted, in a serious note, that the Transit Authority is working with the city engineer and the city in the final design and moving forward with construction of the Broadway pedestrian project. And, I see our city engineer grabbing her mic. Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, just again, thanks to transit staff for working with us on the Upper Broadway bike lanes and pedestrian connection project. It's a true active transportation project, and when we get to incorporate transit facilities, it just makes it more whole.
We talked at length about that.
Matt Mock gave a good update on
Yeah, he
the
did.
status of the project and the reasonings for the final locations and what have you. So Transit Board is fully in support of seeing the project move forward. Transportation Commission,
Yes, we met and talked about a lot of things. I'm not sure we need to,
Okay. We
go
don't.
over any of it.
Staff
Oh,
can-
the walk to school day, was
staff
it
can
a
go.
success? We didn't, I unfortunately did not get to attend. I don't know if you, so.
totally safe.
Totally missed it.
Okay, LAFCO, let's see, we're meeting later on this month to discuss fire district consolidations. SACOG, briefly.
We
It's
meet-
your birthday, so. please be
Yeah,
brief.
nothing to really report, so, no.
All right, thank you. Placerville Fire Safe Council. Of course, they've been meeting.
We have been, and it's pretty much ongoing. We're concentrating on grants now, and
good.
what we have to do. There's one clause in there that we have to do the matching, and what I really would like highlighted, and I talked to Marion about this, is that when folks do anything to upgrade their property, all that counts as credits for this matching grant. And somehow we need to establish some sort of where people can report that, and I don't know how we're gonna do that. What are, you guys are going to sign languages or something?
We are.
We're not supposed to report on anything on it.
Right. I
Okay,
know
and we
what
will
you're
meet,
talking about.
it's the Thursday, that's the third Thursday of the month at the Veterans Hall.
At the
Anybody?
Veterans Hall. At what time?
At 5:30. So
5:30.
anyone that's interested, we would love to have you come.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Dennis, did you have a
I have a
comment
couple
on
of
that?
things to report from, further to report from
2x2?
2x2.
Thank you.
We did meet with homeless coordinator, not homeless coordinator, but Daniel DeMonte and his boss.
Don Seaman.
Don Seaman, thank you. And we talked a little bit, it was disappointing to find out how little opportunities we have to move the needle on what we're doing for the homeless this winter and this season. However, they are actively involved in creating going through a planning process for the future monies and for, they've got all the groundwork, now they're looking at really planning, which I hate to say it's how government works, but apparently this is a very long process of years in the making and a few years out still until we have really active. Although we do have 2 navigators being hired, one part-time half-time up in Tahoe, one full-time here, and they should be active in about February, I think, is about the time that they said. So we should have something like that, and that's for the west slope, not just the city, unfortunately. We could use one. We talked a little bit at Amgen, and we're hoping it's going to happen. I know that the county is eager to participate, but they still have to go through their process and approve that they are interested in doing it. And so that's where we're sitting right now, is we have a couple of different agencies that are very interested in doing that, and that we're letting Amgen know that, and we're waiting for their response back. And that's kind of exciting. You know, there's a lot of commitment on our side and the county side, and I see that everybody so far is eager to work for it, although we don't have all the final numbers and what it's supposed to be. We're going down that road, so that's kind of exciting. That's about it.
Thank you, Dennis. Appreciate that. Moving on to item 14, request for future agenda items. I believe, Dennis, you probably have at least one?
I think just one. I think
Okay.
I would like to, and I don't know what this looks like in terms of Clay Street and have some calming. I've talked to, Winnie and I had walked down Clay Street and ended up talking to a few different people that live there, and as well as witnessed quite a bit of speeding in just the short time that we were walking there, and it wasn't even a high traffic time. And, you know, it's anecdotal, but it's there. And I don't know what the chief says or what the city staff or planning or anybody else thinks, but I do know that they have been talking about this for a long time. It is a thing. It's real. It's happening to them. They're the people that have to back out of their driveways every day while people are going fast down that road. And so if we can explore what it looks like to do traffic calming measures for that street, and I don't have the solution to that. We have really smart people that do this kind of thing, but I think we should at least honor those people.
What is the speed limit?
25.
25?
Yeah, and I think we should honor at least those residents. There's a lot of them. I know I know down in Sacramento, they have to get, I can't remember, it's a certain number, it's either 60 or 70% of the residents on the street to sign a petition to have the speed calming measures, whatever they are, in that area. And I had a friend of mine that walked up and down the street and got all the signatures and made it happen. So
I would think, because I remember, Mark, when you were involved with that, the people would, I think you'd get 100% sign.
Easy to get the neighbor. All right, so that would be, is there consensus to have that, staff look into that and bring it back to us? No, thank you very much. Any other future agenda item requests? Seeing no one, moving on to city manager and staff reports. Dave, anything this evening? All right, well, thanks for keeping the city attorney in line down there this evening. All right, well, we have a number of upcoming items for our October 22nd meeting. The parking ordinance, a camping ordinance, extra mile a day proclamation. This is an exciting one, long overdue. Garage compact parking striping. Those are poor little small town ticket generator things. And then the mural on Mosquito. Yeah, we'll see if all of these items come forward. There's a number of other items on here. And with no other business before us this evening, I'll go ahead and adjourn us until our next regularly scheduled meeting on October 22nd at 5:30. Thank you and good night.